Hello everybody. So today I'm going to talk to you about how to read an ILS approach chart along with how to conduct an ILS approach. So with this I am going to show you the Nellis approach, this particular approach, which is the high ILS or lock DME Z for runway 21 left. Now the reason I am showing you this approach is because it's a very complex approach, but in showing you this complex approach, the simple straight-in approaches for most ILS approaches will be much simpler and way easier to understand, and there is a lot of information which is contained in this chart which I will help break down and will help you to understand other charts that will display similar information. So, first up, we are going to be looking at the TACAN for Nellis, which is shown with the red box and the red arrow. It is channel 12, which is channel 12 X-ray on your TACAN system. It is designated with the call sign LSV, which is what it will be, which is its identification mark. Now with that identification mark, it also has a Morse code beep. The Morse code beep is what you will use to confirm and verify that this is the correct TACAN station you are listening to, which it also gives you on the chart. It is showing you as dot dash dot dot, then 3 dots, then 3 dots and another dash. This is Morse code, which you will hear as when you hear this pattern, you are now confirming that you are listening to this TACAN station. If the Morse code beeps match, you know that you are listening to LSV on channel 12 X-ray and that you are not listening to another TACAN station that may be transmitting on the same frequency, or that you're following a different beacon to on the approach than what you need to be listening to. Next, we have the localizer. This will be required for your final approach, and it is listed in multiple places. So the two most prominent places are at the top, where it shows you lock IDIQ, which is the identifier is IDIQ, and lock is indicating localizer. That frequency is 109.10, which you will enter into your ILS system. This will not work on Navy aircraft, as only U.S. Air Force aircraft are the ones that primarily have an ILS system built into the aircraft. The next box to the right of that at the top is the approach course, heading 209. This you will enter into your system on the course heading for your HSI. This will help you in aligning your heading to the TACAN beacon and on the ILS approach, so that the radio signals that are coming, the system knows where you are supposed to be heading and can help guide you on the correct course for the runway. Now, the highlighted box down at about the middle of the chart with another arrow pointing to it, this is the Morse code beeps for the ILS system. In DCS, they're transmitted on a slightly different tone. They're a little lower in volume than the TACAN system, and this Morse code is also very different from the TACAN system in that it has 4 rows because it is a 4-digit identifier. So you have 2 dots, a long, then 2 short, then 2 dots, then another 2 long, short, then a long. And when you hear this, you are confirming that you are listening on the correct localizer 109.1. And when you have verified that it is IDIQ, you know that you are correctly listening in on Nellis's ILS localizer, which will help guide you to the runway with its heading and eventually the glide slope indication when you get onto the correct course. Alright, so now that we have set up our instrumentation to be able to get us the correct approach for the ILS, now we're going to talk about each of the waypoints on this chart. First up is ARCO, A-R-C-O-E. This is a point on your approach directly out of the holding pattern, which is directly above it. You can see that when heading directly towards ARCO, you should be heading about 178, and if you were in the holding pattern, you should be heading 358 in the opposite direction. So you should be heading 178 towards ARCO, which is distance from the TACAN beacon LSV, 30 miles at an altitude of 15,000 feet. This is the beginning of your approach, so you're going to be starting off quite high at 15,000, 30 miles from Nellis, heading 178. The next point is going to be Ronky, R-O-N-K-Y. This will be a continuation of your approach heading 178, distance from Nellis LSV, 25 miles at 15,000 feet. Now you'll notice each of these distances is indicated in a sort of bullet-like shape on the chart, and this is something that is common on all of the Nellis approach charts. So that 25 is indicating miles from the TACAN, which is to the left. The identifying station is LSV. So next is going to be Oni. That is distance from Nellis to 1 miles at 12,500. So now we're beginning our descent. And this is also a point for your reverse if you have to do a missed approach on the reverse course of 003. But this is also a point on the beginning of the 2-1 arc. So once you hit Oni, you're going to be then heading to Chris, which is indicated lower on the chart at about 3/4 of the way down the chart, KRYSS. Still distance of 2-1 miles. So between Oni and Chris, you are going to be maintaining 2-1 miles distance from Nellis, essentially shifting from a heading of 178 towards the airport to get over to the heading of 209 for the approach. And you will also be descending, as marked on the chart, to 8,600 feet. Now, once you reach Chris, you will be turning 209 towards the airport, towards the next point, which is Sheet. At this point, you will be 13.2 miles, and you will have descended from 8,600 to 5,000 feet. This is an approximation of the glide slope and the minimum altitude that you should be maintaining at this point to avoid terrain, any nearby terrain that may cause collision with the aircraft. At Sheet, you should have intercepted the localizer. That's what it says there, INTCP. LCZR, you should have already intercepted the localizer and be on the correct heading and following the localizer if you were doing an ILS approach. Next, you're going to be continuing on course 209 as indicated by your HSI and your localizer, and you will be descending to ROTSE, ROTSE. This is also a radar point, and you will be 7.2 miles from LSV at an altitude of 4,200 feet. At this point, you should definitely be having the glide slope, and you should be following the glide slope down, but we also have a further mark into the approach called Geller at 3.8 miles at 3,200 feet. And then there is another mark, 1.8 miles into the approach from LSV. And then we get to our final point, which is Sesde, Sesde, at 0.6 miles from the airport. Now, this is the point at which your decision altitude comes into play, which is listed directly below the chart where we are following. This is the altitude at which you have to have visual sighting of the runway or the airport in order to continue the approach. If not, then you will then execute a missed approach and go around and go back to the beginning of the approach. This is mostly due to the fact that if you do not have visual on the runway, the ILS system in these jets is not accurate enough to get you completely down without having any kind of visual indication of the runway or having any idea where it is. That decision altitude for the ILS approach for 2-1 left is 2,065 feet. Now, if you were doing this just with the localizer, no glide slope, that decision altitude is now 2,440 feet. And that means when you hit that altitude, if you do not see the airport at all, you will now have to execute a go-around and declare a missed approach. At which point, you will then follow the missed approach guidelines, which are here on the chart. So, directly above the approach chart that we have been following from Chris to sheet and all the way down is a little indication that says 15,000 LSV R210. Now, this is just a condensed version of what is written out at the top right-hand side of the chart. And it specifically says, missed approach, climbed 15,000, intercept LSV TACAN heading 210 to 2.5 DME Rock X, so point Rock X on the chart. So you're going to execute your climb based on the minimum climb for a missed approach, and you will head 210 to 2.5 miles away from Nellis. Then you will execute a climbing right-hand turn to 020, and then you will intercept heading 358 LSV back to Arco and back into the hold at 15,000 feet. This is in the indication that you do not see the airport, or if conditions are bad enough that you want to go around, this is the procedure that you will follow, which will clear you of any obstacles and any conflicts of traffic in the nearby area. Alright, so now we are going to execute the approach that we briefed. So, I have pulled up the ILS approach that we briefed and that we're going to use. So let's unpause. Alright, so we're going to use altitude, hold the air altitude, and we're going to set in the information we need to put in. So channel 12 X-ray for the TACAN, set for transmit receive. Then we're going to input the ILS localized frequency 109.1, enter, and we're going to input the course 209. Alright, now that we have done that, we are going to verify that we have the localizer tuned in with the Morse code. And that is confirm that's the localizer. is the TACAN, so we have the correct stations tuned in. So now we're going to slow down for the approach, and we're going to set our mode for the TACAN system. Alright, so first part of the approach is very easy. We are going to be at 15,000 feet until about 21 miles from the airport, and then we will be turning on the 21 arc and descending at the same time. And we have a controlling obstacle at 7,600, so I'm going to set. Oh, there. So I'm going to set the floor at 7,600 to give us a warning. Alright, and we're at 3-4 miles. Let's turn right, get on the course of 178. Make sure we got the aircraft configured for landing. Not sure I'm off. CMDS standby. Landing lights on. Everything else should be set. Right. 32 miles, 15,000 feet. And we should be good to go. I was going to set this for the ILS and TACAN system. Just past 25 miles, so now we can descend to 8,600. You see autopilot, and we'll begin our descent. And you can descend all the way down to 8,600 directly and immediately, but you will probably just want to continue a gradual descent because that altitude mark is for the entirety of the 21 miles all the way to Chris, which is right at the end of the 2-1 mark. So we're approaching 2-1 miles. I'm going to turn perpendicular to TACAN beacon to discontinue closing. So now we're on the 2-1 arc. We're going to keep from closing distance and just wait until the TACAN beacon swings around to our aligned course heading of 210. Clear down to 8,600. Going to increase the descent here. So we're approaching our turn-in mark. outer arrow of the TACAN has aligned with our course heading. We're going to begin our turn in. 8,600 on the mark. A little bit left of lineup, so I'm going to correct right a little bit. Not too much. And we've got our waypoint marking beginning of the runway. So now we're clear down to 5,000 at 13.2. Right now we do not have glide slope capture, so we are just following the localizer until we get glide slope.
Altitude.
And it's our obstacle warning, the altitude, our radar altimeter alert, so we'll continue. So right now I'm pretty much flying on all instruments due to low visibility, which is precisely what we want the ILS approach for, is to help guide you to the runway in these kinds of conditions. It's very task saturating, and especially if you haven't practiced it in a while. So if I'm a little quiet in a lot of portions, I'm a little overwhelmed. Trying to keep things together. So we're really high on the approach. We should be at 5,000. We're at 12 miles. And we're currently at 6, so need to increase the descent rate. I've gone idle. What we don't want to do is chase the ILS needles, so as it's coming up, we're going to lower the descent rate. Allow those needles to come up very slowly. Chase them all over the place, we'll never get completely lined up. I'm gonna turn right just a bit. 5,000 feet. Next mark is 4,200 at 7.2 miles. Now we're glide slope. We're below that altitude. Gain altitude. Now we're coming back onto the glide slope. We're now below 7.2. We can drop below 4,200. Next mark is 3.8 at 3,200. Gear down. Okay, still a little above glide slope coming down. Alright, now we're on the needles. So try not to chase the needles. So we're still below the glide slope. Run down just a little bit fast, 2,600. Need to see the runway at 2,065 for abort. We are 2.4 miles from the runway. 2 miles. as you can see, as we get really close, we're getting really sensitive, so we gotta be really careful here. $2,300. 2,200. Back on glide slope. Visual on runway, continuing. Level low. There we go. Just gonna hold it there. Break and not bad, a little low at some parts, but overall good approach, good landing. Anywho, hope this helps with your guys' approach and landings with the ILS system, and I hope to see you in the next video.